Good morning or good afternoon or maybe good evening, and welcome to this Fleet Forum webinar, where today I would like to share some research findings about the impact of road traffic crashes in aid and development organizations. We had quite a high number of participants who signed up, so I would like to wait just 1 minute, 2 minutes maybe, to give everybody the opportunity to enter the webinar room. And I would like, in the meantime, to do a little bit of a sound check. I hope everybody can hear me okay, and that the sound is loud and clear. And it is already great to see that some of you are introducing yourself in the chat box. What I also will do is, while we are waiting for the other people, is enable the Q&A, because we will have a Q&A at the end of the webinar. So let me see. It's perfect. I hear that the sound works, and it's good to have you all here. Just give it 1 more minute, and then we can start. Okay, well, let's start. Maybe some more people are showing up. Like I said, I want to share some of the findings from a research project that Fleet Forum undertook last year, which was around the impact of road traffic crashes in aid and development organizations. For those of you who have never been in a webinar before, or for those of you who have never met me in a webinar before, my name is Roos van Stijn. I'm the Development Director with Fleet Forum. And in this webinar, we're going to talk about the findings, but also I would like to open the chat and for you to post your comments, to post your questions. And if you post your question, then please make sure that you use that little question mark icon, because then it makes it easier for me to pick them out at the end of the session, let's say after 20 minutes. And display them on the screen. So if you could do that, that would be really, really helpful for me. So let me tell you a little bit about the research that we did. For Fleet Forum, road safety has always been very, very important. We know from the work that we have been doing with organizations and working with the sector that road safety is a big issue. And for a lot of organizations, road traffic crashes are still the #1 cause of death and injuries, either for staff or for other road users where vehicles of organizations are involved. So in 2022, we received funding from the UPS Foundation to do some research around road safety interventions. So what are organizations doing to help prevent road traffic crashes from happening? And what we wanted to do with this research is then not only look at, okay, what is the existing evidence around interventions, but also how are currently aid and development organizations dealing with road safety, and especially looking at their road safety culture. And from this research, we developed 2 reports. One is a review of existing evidence and studies from 2011 to 2022, and that is not specifically aimed at aid and development organizations, but it was aimed at what are organizations who are operating a fleet of vehicles or who are using transport, what types of interventions have they implemented, and what does the evidence say on the effectiveness of the intervention. So that was one study that we did. And the other study, we invited our member organizations to be part of interviews, but also on focus groups to discuss what type of interventions are most used in the sector, but also on how interventions are led by safety culture in organizations. And to that extent, we talked to 15 participants, and in the focus groups, We had 15 participants from 13 humanitarian organizations ranging from very local aid and development organizations to UN agencies, representatives of the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, and international NGOs. So the questions that we wanted to ask ourselves is, well, how is road safety managed for aid and development organizations? And we wanted to focus specifically on leadership practices, safety norms, competence, policies, and road safety systems and procedures, because the sum of that makes a safety culture in an organization. And then the other research question that we had was, what evidence is there for the effectiveness of various kinds of interventions that organizations are using or can use to increase their road safety? So that was the starting point where we started with our research. We worked together. We did not do this by ourselves. We worked together with the University of Cranfield, and we chose them because they have a big department looking at work-related road safety. So that's how we came to work with them. From the research, we have two reports, and when we send out the link to the webinar later today, to the recorded version, we will also share the links to the reports so that you can read it. But from the research, we had 4 themes that were emerging. Theme 1 is leadership and culture. Theme 2 is around crash management. The third theme was looking into intervention effectiveness. And then the last one was changing the safety culture. Now, let me share you some of the findings that we have. And like I said, feel free to use the chat box to say, hey, I agree, or maybe you don't agree, or maybe you have different experiences, or maybe if you have a question, also good to put that in the chat box. So the first theme was looking at leadership and culture. And what we found in the research, and again, this is research from organizations, not necessarily aid and development organizations, that have implemented fleet safety or road safety programs, and where the evidence of the effectiveness of that program was, of that intervention was researched. And the research evidence said that organizations with a strong safety culture and compliance with safety rules have better outcomes. And organizations with strong management commitment to safety reported lower crash rates. And that is what we also found when we were talking with the people in the focus groups, is those organizations where senior management or where safety is also part and parcel of the responsibility and accountability of senior managers, that they have lower crash rates, and that safety is much more on their radar than organizations who don't have that. So what we can learn from this is, as a recommendation, to make this visible and to make leadership aware of the of road traffic crashes and the risk that organizations are having. It is important to record and monitor road safety information across the organization, and that you use it to identify patterns, but also areas for improvement and good practices. So do not leave it within the fleet department or the logistics department alone, but spread this information across the organization. Then the second recommendation is that senior leaders should model good safety practice. And what we mean with that is that senior leaders should always look at, okay, so how does my behavior, my own behavior, lead to good safety practice? The third recommendation is to put road safety at the heart of your organizational priorities. And what we mean with that is that even in all the activities that your organization does, road safety should be part and parcel of it. And road safety should not be seen as something that we do if we have time for it, or if we feel like it, or if it Global Road Safety Week maybe, but that road safety is an everyday, in every action and every activity that we do, that is embedded in there. And then the last one, and that may sound a little bit like a no-brainer, but we wanted to share it in any case, is that organizations should invest in safety management resources. It has no use or it has no effect if organizations say, well, we do value safety and safety is really, really important for us. But by the way, we don't have any resources, meaning time or money to invest in it. So these are the recommendations, and feel free to give your opinion about these, well, evidence or outcomes or recommendations in the chat. Then the next one. The next theme was looking more into crash management and particularly the use of technology such as telematic systems or tracking systems. And what we found in our research evidence is that the use of systems to monitor drivers has increased tremendously over the last 20 years. However, if you look at the research evidence, then the researchers haven't found that it has impact on safety. And that is maybe a strong message. So basically what the researchers are saying is that, hey, tracking systems by itself do not have an impact on safety of your drivers, your vehicles, and your other road users. Now, there is a caveat to that. If you use a telematic systems plus, and I want to put some emphasis on the plus, in combination with the coaching of drivers, in combination with direct feedback to drivers, using your data from the telematic systems, that can lead to behavioral change. And the reason why I want to emphasize this is that what we often see in organizations is that, hey, investments are made into telematic systems, into black boxes, tracking systems, and then organizations feel like, hey, we get the data, we can use it, but it doesn't necessarily say that that leads to safer behavior. Now, what the research did find, is that if you combine the data from your telematic system plus direct feedback or direct coaching to the drivers, that could lead to a 20% reduction of the crashes that are recorded. So think about that. So from there, we have some recommendations. Well, logically, when you think or when you use telematic systems, tracking devices, boxes, apps, where you can track your drivers, do include feedback loops to drivers to improve their performance. And not feedback loops that after a month that you go to the drivers, but plan weekly sessions with your drivers to look at how they have been driven, include them in that, and also look at both the positive behavior of your drivers, but also on the things that they can improve. Now, if you are not using telematic systems at the moment, then a recommendation is to, but if you are looking into start using it, so if you are looking into procuring telematic systems, then ask the providers for evidence on the safety impact. And use this to inform your organizational approach to telematics. So that's a recommendation as well. And then, of course, when you have those telematic systems, really look at the implementation of your crash management interventions, both at local and organizational level. So at country level, you might look at different interventions using your telematics data and the coaching results from your drivers than what you would do at organization level. Let me see. The third one That looked at intervention effectiveness. And let me just, before I go into the research evidence and into the recommendations, what we mean with intervention effectiveness is, well, simply how effective are the interventions, but the interventions are the things that you do to reduce the risk of being involved in a work-related road crash and to improve your work-related road safety. So interventions can be changing behavior of the drivers, reducing speeding, driver training, telematic systems, a culture in the organization changing, communication campaigns. So these are the types of the examples of interventions that organizations are putting in place to reduce their risk of being involved in a work-related road crash. And when we looked at the evidence, and we have in our research, we have a lot of information about different interventions, and we just picked for the summary, we picked a number of that, is that evidence in the effectiveness of interventions is limited. And the reason for that is that in many cases, organizations say, hey, I have my road traffic crashes, I see my trends, I'm gonna do this, but they are not measuring whether that intervention has an effect. So that's the limitation of the evidence. Now, what we have also seen from the research is that driver training is a very, very popular intervention, but it has not to be proven effective unless it includes group discussions. So, and what we mean with that is that if drivers are trained, and if that training is, let's say, a skills-based training, so more on the mechanical side of driving, if that is implemented, then it has proven to be not effective, or even ineffective, or even a counter effect that the crashes went up. And the reason for that is that drivers who are trained on skills only tend to be sort of overconfident, and that they feel like, oh, I've just received that training, so I'm good to go. And so we see that as an effect that the number of crashes can go up. Now, if you include in your skills-based training, if you include group discussions, and group discussions is not, don't take me wrong, this is not a discussion like, oh, let's talk for 20 minutes, but if you really put in group discussions as part of your training, where you have maybe half a day of discussions, of small group work with your drivers, on reflecting on how previous interventions have been implemented in the organization, and if you plan follow-ups on your interventions, then it can be an effective intervention. We know from the research that can lead to a 50% reduction in crashes. So that's something to be thought about. Now, another one that I want to highlight is around incentive programs. Maybe for those of you who have been in other trainings before, or webinars before around the topic of safety, is that we at Fleet Forum, we always say, be very, very aware of the counter effect of your incentive programs, driver bonuses, financial rewards to your drivers. And also what the research evidence shows is that incentive programs are ineffective in managing the risks in the absence of a good fleet risk program. So incentive programs, just by targeting the drivers to put an incentive program, a driver bonus in place, that will not lead to a reduction of crashes. And again, it tends to lean on negative incentives. So as an incentive, we're going to reprimand the driver, or we're going to give him a fine, or we're going to say, oh, well, if you have a crash, then you need to pay for the damage, etc. and that can really lead to riskier behavior, underreporting, and likely to more incidents in the organization. And that's what the research show. And then the last one, safety should not be a concern of the drivers alone. And that's what we see with many of the research that we have been looked at, is that it is focused on the drivers, and it is made as a theme for the drivers, but programs that are including that are making it broader in the organization, that are more effective. Then the recommendations. When you do interventions, review the evidence of the effectiveness of interventions from your own and other organizations. So look at what does work in other organizations, because it is likely that it will work for your organization as well. Develop a strategic approach, and what we mean with that is that it should not be a one-off activity. Your intervention should be placed in a longer period of time, and should be mixed and matched. So you should have more interventions targeting different behaviors, different groups of people, and it should be maybe for a 2-year period of time in the organization. We strongly recommend to implement a group discussion approach as an effective behavioral intervention to improve fleet safety. And it would also be good to involve local safety leaders and give them authority, and especially those who understand the regional context. And I think that is important in the operations in which many of you work, that local safety leaders get the authority to say, hey, this intervention we want to implement, and that one we are not going to implement because it doesn't work in our context. Then the last one, changing the safety culture. So when we looked at the research, is that, internal and external communications can influence a culture of safety. And what is equally important is that there is a top-down messaging going on, but also bottom-up. So it should not only come from senior management around safety, but also from the people at the work floor, who should message about road safety. And then the other thing that we have found is that looking at the type of environments where many organizations are operating, is that maybe the risk perception and risk sensitivity, and maybe the risk acceptance and the willingness to be in a risky environment, that may be different for people working in aid and development organizations. And therefore, it is extremely important to have risk perception and hazard perception training, because it can be beneficial for road safety. And what we mean with that is, if you are already let's say in a dangerous environment, and that is your day-to-day work, you might be more willing to accept that you're going to be involved in a crash, or that somebody else is going to be involved in a crash as a result of your actions. And that, of course, is something that we would like to change, and that is something that we would like to see different. So that's part of the evidence. I'm going to pick, because I want to leave some time for questions, I'm going to pick one recommendation. You will get the recording to this session, so you can look at it yourself. I would say what is important is, as a recommendation, is to develop a communications program to make staff at all levels aware of road safety challenges and find solutions. So these were the findings and the recommendations. Now, maybe what is next? But what do we want to do with these reports? Based on the research, based on the two research reports, we have developed a fleet safety intervention toolkit, where you can look at business cases, where you can look at effective interventions, but also where it gives you guidance on how to create a business case for road safety. So if you're looking to get funding, if you're looking to get approval for road safety programs, you can find guidance on how to build that. And it's available on the Fleet Forum Knowledge platform. And then what we will also do is we will take the research, we will take the toolkit, and we are creating a specialization training. It's a 5-week self-paced online training with 5 live lessons. And that one is to be launched on the 15th of May 2023. And that coincides with the UN Global Road Safety Week. And with that, and by the way, we will share all the links to the toolkit and the research reports in the email that we share at the after the webinar. Let me see. We have questions. Let's see. Can encouraging reporting of crash near misses be another recommendation? Yes, Sadiq, thanks for your question. Yes, definitely. If you look at the in the reports, then encouraging reporting of all incidents or all crashes, near misses that are happening is definitely a recommendation, because that also forms the basis of how you select your interventions, right? You want to know first, okay, what is happening? Why is it happening? What is the root cause? How often is it happening before you want to select your intervention? Because you want to pick the most effective intervention for the most prominent behavior that you have and the most urgent issue that you have in the organizations. Let me see. Sam, what would be an example of the hard evidence of safety impact that the telematics provider could provide? What we have mentioned in the report is that it would be a good practice to link the data from the telematics provider to the data of the insurance. And what we see is that organizations who have done that, so who link the two together, that they get better, more hard evidence of the safety impact. And if the telematics data is supportive of the reduction in crashes. So that would be a recommendation there. Would you be able to share a reference to the research that say group discussions make driver training more effective? Yeah, so in the research documents, we have included all the references to all the studies that we looked at. So you can look them up. We even provided links and titles, so you can definitely look that up. Yeah, and plus, apart from that, we also have outlined how that group discussion should look like. So with a small timeline and some high-level topics or content for group discussions. That's maybe more a comment. Normally, culture-related things are moving very slowly. Very slowly. How can I speed this process up? Take a seatbelt as an example. Thanks, Hassan. I think it's a great question. Yes, you're right. Culture-related things are moving very slowly. My recommendation would be to build a business case, and for that you need to have data. So you have to have data on how often are people not wearing a seatbelt, to take your example, and to what kind of risky situations or to what kind of actual incidents or crashes does that lead, and show that to senior management. Make a financial case as well in the toolkit, but also in the training that we are developing. We're gonna give guidance on how to do that, and then present that to management to say, hey, this is what it costs the organization right now in terms of money, in terms of resources wasted. If people are getting injured or killed, then you have to get a new person, right? And then work with senior management, combine multiple interventions to change that behavior. Let me see if we have. I'm gonna do one more. Let me see. Timely analysis of telematics report is critical. Weekly compared to monthly analysis from the telematics should be. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Ibuka. This is definitely right. This is what I was saying about the feedback loop, the coaching to drivers, and to share both the positive feedback, but also the feedback how people can improve. That's extremely important. Yeah. Okay, let me see. I see that we are at the end of this webinar. So thanks a lot for your participation in the webinar. Next week, we are back with another webinar around this topic. So next week, my colleague Paul will give you more information about how to build a business case for road safety. So he will basically continue on this topic and go a little bit more in detail on how to create a business case. Like I said, we will share the recorded version of this webinar. In that email, we will also give you the links to the research document, but also to the toolkit that you can find on the Fleet Forum Knowledge platform. I hope you enjoyed it. After the webinar, you will be asked to give a rating to the webinar. Hope you will do that. And I hope to see you next time. Thanks a lot.